Well, welcome everybody, and welcome Celinda. Looking forward to our conversation. Taking it all to the next level, hopefully.
I apologize for cutting you off. I didn't realize you were going to say something else. I was jumping on the show.
Oh, well, I had just said a happy Thanksgiving to you, so, and to everybody else who's listening and not listening, and may we all reach to the level of beyond Thanksgiving to gratitude, total, complete gratitude for what we have.
Yep, for the breath of life, right?
From there on out, yes, for that awesome gift that started with that breath. So, what's on your mind?
Well, just a question I asked you at the end of yesterday's show about the eighth Beatitude, which is not mentioned, and how perplexing it was, almost a Zen koan for me. The perplexing to say, why was the eighth one attached there when all of the others were very positive, and then all of a sudden we get hit with, well, you're going to be persecuted according to the Greek translation. And so I thought maybe you could address that a little bit. How does the eighth one fit in with the rest of the seven? And it's 2 verses there that apply to the eighth one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, my take is that, and one of the reasons why I left it off of the poster when I translated it, or did the interpretation of it, was that I believe it's optional, and it depends where you live. And I don't mean geographically. Remember,
within your head.
Remember our definition of denial is when I think or speak of something outside of me being the cause of what's moving inside of me, then I'm in a state of denial and I'm living in the non-being mind. And if you look, if you look at the 3 filters, Yeshua says you got rakhma, you got fear, and you've got hostility. Which filter does that whole perceptual construct come from?
Well, it comes from fear.
Okay. So my offering would be any perceptual construct, any interaction, any communication that comes from fear means that we violated the first law. And we've started our own persecution.
Beautiful.
We set up a vibration. Go ahead.
I said just beautiful. I was hoping for something hopeful about that, and it brings it right back home, doesn't it?
Yeah, any construct that comes from the mind that's based in any form of hostility or fear, we know right off the bat that I just violated the first law, rakhma. I've lost my human life, and anything that I can't hold a space of love for, I've given up my human life. And I've turned it over to carbon-based memory, which means now I'm locked in the replicate world. And what is the replicate world made of? It's made of poverty and excuses and trauma and drama and pain and attack and, what's wrong with me, the power person messages, the power person dynamic, repeating. And, I think we had and I think Susan's on, I think we had a really powerful example yesterday with Susan where she played out the 8th Beatitude with the self-attack. And Susan, I'm going to invite you if you'd like to come into this conversation. It was kind of a bit of a self-attack. And then the willingness to open and go, oh, yeah, I'm going to go back and reclaim my human life. And as long as we're, quote, unquote, worried about and believe that something is going to come from outside of us, then we're in the dissociated mind. And as long as we're in the dissociated mind, we're going to replicate what's gone before us. So if the first question I ask myself with any response to anything that I have is, which filter is this coming from? That's the earliest stage, I think, at which we can say, oh, I just violated the first law. What's the first law? Maintain rakhma for the Creator, for neighbor, and by doing so, I maintain my human life. Now I'm functioning out of a space of conscious, active, present love, and now I'm going to produce a result that's based in conscious, active, present love. Or I may be like Yeshua, who says, I have a project I'm going to do. You know, there's actually, if you ever get a chance to see it, I don't know whether it's on the internet or not, but I went to see a play years ago, and it was called Cotton Patch Gospel.
Oh, that's
and it's basically Yeshua's life story set in southern Georgia. You know, where the governor of Georgia is is Pontius Pilate, and the boys, the disciples are all, just southern Georgia, good old boys. And Yeshua goes through the whole crucifixion and comes back to them. And the first thing he does is he looks at him, he looks at his body, and he says, look, it worked. It worked. And, if you look at the pre-story to that experience, you get if you've got the brain cells for it, you get a whole different message from this whole idea of crucifixion, which I think this particular 8th Beatitude kind of refers to. So Yeshua's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He goes through a major healing crisis. He sweats blood. I mean, literally, as a physician, if I were watching someone and watching them sweat blood and they're breathing and they're connected and they can still talk, I know they're in a mega healing crisis. They're at a level of detox where they're throwing off probably generations and generations and generations of stuff. There's where I think the real healing work was done. Then Yeshua comes out, confronts Peter. Peter's attacking the high priest servant. He's trying to chop off his ear. Yeshua, that's the point where Yeshua points out to Peter that he's trapped in Satan. He's trapped in the mind of the past. He's responding to something as though it is an attack. Of course, Peter didn't have the lesson from the Course in Miracles, in my defenselessness, my power and safety lie. But he points out to Peter, and oh golly, if we could just get this message out to all of the world. He says to Peter, if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword.
Really?
The very energy that we engage in that is less than love is ultimately what will kill us if we consent to die and if we use that energy. So he refers to Peter as Satan directly, and I've had this conversation with, well, no, he's talking to Satan in Peter. No, he very clearly says Peter, Satan. It's like he's clearly calling Peter Satan, and he defines what he means. He says, for you think in the mind of a man. And if you look at this whole question you asked about the 8th Beatitude, it comes from the mind of man, carbon-based memory, past, fear, as you say. And so there's another place to live from, and that's from what he defined it as is the plan of God. And so he stops Peter. He does what a human being would do. He does, to me, this is like the crescendo demonstration that we all need to get. Here's the guy who's here to rip this man Yeshua to shreds in the most brutal, ugly, horrendous way possible. And Yeshua knows exactly what's coming. He set it up. He said, Peter, get out of the way. I set this up. This is what I'm here for. You're trying to frustrate my demonstration here. And he does what a human life would do to the archenemy. He reaches forward and heals him. Can we do that? Can you take the person that you consider to be the deepest archenemy that you've got and truly, fully embrace them from a space of conscious, active, present love? If you can't, then you've given up your human life to them. So to me, the idea here with every question and every answer we give, is this an answer that comes from being, from aliveness and abundance? And, I've had people who've have heard me offer that interpretation of what happened after the Garden of Gethsemane, and they've said to me, well, Michael, that's interesting, but did you notice that got him dead? And I say, yes, but did you notice they couldn't kill him? They couldn't keep him that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we see in that whole scenario, and we take it as a whole picture, is not the crucifixion. We see what human life is capable of when it is connected to that state of being, that state of grace, that state of salvation, the gift we were given of our human lives right there with the very first breath. And so he demonstrated what a human life can do. You can't keep it dead. But when we're coming from that other mind, then all the mind can do is replicate. We've forgotten our creatorship. And when we're in, first order of business to me in every case is, how do I restore myself to my human life? Because I can ask a question from carbon-based memory, which means I'm a member of the one world universal religion of guilt, fault, blame, suffering, and victimhood. And if I'm in that church, then any question I ask, every external answer is irrelevant because I've broken the first law. I'm not living my human life. I've given it up. Any answer we get from that mind is going to be carbon-based memory's answer. Susan yesterday went into a really deep inquiry in herself about her sister. And in so doing, got to look at another level of her power person dynamic. And I suspect that if you take this whole conversation into your next worksheet, you'll be touching into a power person dynamic. Am I coming from this condition of the first word in the Beatitudes, tuvehun? And if I'm coming from that space, then I'm going to know the answer direct from the Creator. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah, I've got my work cut out for me. It's no different than Susan's.
Welcome to the human race, the non-human race.
Right, there we go. I keep trying to throw my non-human button away, but it doesn't work. It keeps coming back, so I have to throw it away again. It's like that old adage of saying, I've retired from being the general manager of the universe, which then we take it back, and then we have to throw it away again. We don't have to do anything. We have the opportunity. It comes up every day.
And that Beatitudes followed up one of the things that Yeshua says there. You are the salt of the earth. If the salt becomes tasteless, with what will you do that? Where's your human life? And in that culture, salt was a pretty, Middle East deserts, that was a pretty important thing to life. It was a fertilizer in the soil. It was used for sterilization of things that needed to be sterilized. It was used on food for flavor. So it was a pretty broadly applicable energy to their lives. And that's a metaphor for, if you have your salt, if you have your being, then it can be applied to any circumstance or any situation in which you find yourself and will bring fulfillment and healing.
Right. The Romans
so the first thing,
their allegiance in salt.
In salt, yeah, it was a pretty important thing. So when I ask a question, the first thing I want to do with my question is this coming from tuvehun, from this neural structure active? Is this coming from rakhma? Am I asking from a human life, or am I speaking from a replicate mind in need of healing? Oftentimes the answer we give will be an answer that tries to blow somebody else off, with no realization that in order to give that answer, we've given up our human lives. And with that, we've given up aliveness, we've given up abundance, we've given up generosity, we've given up creatorship. And we don't realize we threw that all away by denying our true nature, by living in that dissociated state. You know, I think back, and I'm not even sure now, 15, 18 years ago, if you'd have been in a Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. In fact, I'm thinking that you originally saw one of my original videos, like way back, decades ago, right? I remember our first conversation, you were telling me where you'd run into the work, and it was several years earlier, if I remember correctly. Is that accurate?
Oh, would you say what you just said, the very last thing, please?
Yeah, I'm just working to remember your first conversation with me when you called me and we spoke. And if I remember correctly, you had told me that you'd seen my Why Is This Happening to Me Again video somewhere several years before. Is that an accurate recollection?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, 15 years ago now?
No, it was in 1992 or 3. We were in the other side of the mountain in Wallowa County in Joseph, Oregon. And a friend had the 4, what were they VCR? The
right.
4
VHS tapes, yeah.
Yeah.
That was another lifetime.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, if you go back and remember, if you go back and remember that workshop, I was working with a 4x8 board, and at the top of the board were the words deny, suppress, project. And for the first, I don't know, probably 25 years that I taught that workshop, from the day I created it until I got a piece of guidance where I got to my own connectedness and therefore was able to get the abundance of the answer, which I had blocked previously. And I can remember so clearly, I was getting ready to teach that workshop, and it was like Rook had grabbed me by the ear and sat me down and said, Michael, it's not, and I mean, I heard these words, not in my ear. Michael, it's not suppress, it's dissociate. And I can remember it's like, well, what does that mean? What are you talking about? And suppress indicates, we kind of hide something from ourselves, but it's still kind of there and you can do something with it. But what I was shown in that moment, and that's got to be 15 years ago or more, and that's when, if you look at that workshop from any video that I did or listen to any audio that I did from that day forward, those words were never on the top of the board again. It was always deny, dissociate, project. Because when we dissociate from something, and that's why it's so hard to recapture, that's why it's such a challenge to remember, oh yeah, this is coming from fear. I'm out of rakhma. I just broke the first law. Why am I concerned about anything else when I just broke the first law? Because when I dissociate, when I go into denial, I'm saying to my mind, you are not allowed to show me this. You must hide this from me forever, and you've got to replace this with a lie. You've got to make up a story that proves to me that whoever it is, as a member of the one world universal religion of guilt, fault, blame, suffering, and victimhood, as a member of that church, you cannot show me any evidence that this has got to do with me. You've got to show me that it's about something out there. And when we do that, then the mind of man, carbon-based memory, has to focus on the goal, has to come from or formulate its construct from the goal I hold for this object of attention that I'm blaming, and hallucinate whatever data from whatever data it's got to make up a story to keep the truth hidden from me, to keep the part of me that I need to embrace hidden from me. And so we make up all kinds of stories about poverty and loss and victimhood and blame and whose fault is it, and never once step into the solution of living from being, creatorship, and abundance. So that dissociated tail, painful thing to bring up. I mean, the deeper, the more often we can say to ourselves, why is this happening to me again? The deeper we've denied and dissociated from that part of our minds, the deeper it's hidden from us, and the more it's going to come bite us in the butt over and over and over and over and over again until I step into aliveness, bring the presence of active life forward. And then what happens is the whole universe shifts around that shift in my mind in terms of me. So if what I'm creating, let's say, and actually I go into the memory of when I first started doing this work. You know, I came out of a family system and a church system that basically said if you're going to do spiritual work, you have to live in poverty. And the first 7 or so years that I did this work, I knew that was my lot in life, and there were times when I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids. And on December 24th, Christmas Eve, I had rented an inexpensive house up in North Georgia, and moved my kids up there, and I was working on writing my book. December 24th, the pipes froze. We couldn't stay in the house. And there was a friend in North Palm Beach that had been saying, Michael, come on down here, come on down here, come on down here. So we couldn't stay in the house with no water. The landlord said, oh, it's going to take weeks to get that fixed. So we got in the car and drove to North Palm Beach, where this friend put us up. He was a friend with a minister at Unity in Lake Worth. He introduced me to the minister. And I told him a little bit of what we did and asked, would be open to me doing a workshop. And he was like, well, yeah, certainly. I mean, we're here and, the space is available. But, here in Lake Worth, workshops don't work. They don't. It just doesn't happen, But if you want to waste your time and do it, you're welcome to it. So he invited me and I did a Sunday service and did a Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop after that service. And we had, I'm not remembering exactly, something like 100 people there, and he was just like blown away. And he introduced me to the minister in Fort Lauderdale, who invited me to come down and speak, which I did. And it ended up turning into months that we were there. And we finally heard from the landlord the house was fixed, and I had a commitment in Atlanta. So I set the date. I had done a series of workshops at Unity in Delray, at Unity in Fort Lauderdale. And the last of the series, and I remember when they asked me to do that series, they maybe give them titles, and I just kind of, shouted out some titles, wrote out some titles to them, not really even thinking about what I was going to do with them. But the last one in this 6-week series was, Still Waiting for Your Ship to Come In? Which one did you send out? I'm in North Palm Beach. The workshop starts at 7. I've got, and I can remember very clearly, I literally had $102 in my pocket. I was going to drive down to Fort Lauderdale, do this workshop, and I would probably, my share of the donations for that workshop probably would have been around $100. That was sort of the norm in that 6-week series. And I'm driving down I-95, wondering how I'm going to get my kids back and my refrigerator full to feed them on my way back to North Georgia. And I can tell you literally to the inch where I was on the surface of the earth. I was driving down I-95, and I was just before I got to Hillsborough Boulevard, and I had the guidance to get off the highway, find a bank, take 100 of the $102 I had in my pocket, and get the bank to give me a $100 bill for it, and give it away that night. And I can remember saying, what? I'm going to do what? And I got off the highway and I got $100 bill and I gave it away that night. I created an exercise where I asked people, how much do you want? What's the return you want? Okay, great. You want $1 million? You want $2 million? You want 10? Okay, then get that 10 grand out and give it away. Well, wait a minute now. Let's not go that far. Okay, well, what are you willing to give away? Whatever it is, fold it up, write a check to cash, or take the cash out of your pocket, fold it up, small enough in your hand so you can keep your hand closed, and now stand up and walk to somebody else in the room and hand it to them as they walk toward you and exchange whatever's in your hand. Don't look at it. And I have people create an exercise where I have people do an exchange half a dozen times. They walk to a different person, and exchange what was in their hand. I got a $20 bill. Went home, went back up to where we were staying, and I borrowed some money from the fellow we were staying with, and he's protesting. He's like, Michael, you just got things started here. You can't leave. You got to stay here. No, I've got obligations in Atlanta. Got to go. Went out, loaded the kids in the car, loaded the car up, put the key in the ignition. For the first time in about 60,000 miles, when I turned the key, absolutely nothing happened. No click in the solenoid, the starter, nothing. It was dead. And I took that as a signal. Okay, well, then I'm staying. I'm going to stay here. The next week, I had a full-time practice, and I made about 3 times as much money as any week I had made in the 7 years prior to that, where I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids, and it's never dropped below that since. And from that, I can sense, I can go back to that moment where I made the choice to come from a different space than the brainwashing I've been given by my family system, my church, that it had to be poverty, that I came from a different place, and with abundance, gave away. I didn't have the money. I mean, gave away $100 or $102. I didn't have that. But the next week, I had a full-time practice, and things just took off. I ended up being invited to speak at Unity of Del Rey. Actually became almost an assistant minister there, had my own Sunday service, and the whole universe shifted around me in that moment in terms of what I knew I was deserving of and what I would receive. And if I hold that I, in the case of this 8th Beatitude, that I deserve to receive punishment and blame, then yeah, I'll do it. So I think what Yeshua is offering there, he's giving a whole set of circumstances with which, or a whole set of tools with which to activate the reflection of being in us, the neural structure, and that's one of the pieces I got out of Saturday's Quantum Still Point session. Is I realized that with our original being, with that breath of life, came the full active presence of love and the mind of love that came with it, which the scriptures call the mind of Christ, which means there's a whole energy system of mind energy that is now part and parcel of our physiology. But when we buy into the hostility and fear-based power person messages, the brainwash, we shut that down. So now that becomes unconscious, or as Yeshua refers to it in the Beatitudes here, a latent neurostructure. Each of the words, tuvehun, in each of the Beatitudes, tuvehun, 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 says a latent neurostructure. And that neurostructure is a reflection of the mind of Christ in us that we've shut down and overlaid it with all this trash of the mind of man, of carbon-based memory. So what do I need to do? I need to forgive, and I need to move in the direction of sourcing from a different mind rather than simply playing that mind out over and over and over again. And when the main energy that I stand in at any given moment is literally that mind of love in me, the only result I can draw to me is that mind of love. Yes, it's going to vitalize me so that anything else I need to look at is going to come up. Yes, it's going to vitalize others, so all kinds of garbage is going to start to happen around us. But if I stick to that mind, there's a power in me that protects me and holds me safe. And that's the power that's in every one of us. And all we have to do is face everything from all of our generations and forgive it. And then choose to, there's one of the, in the Lord's Prayer, or what was called the Lord's Prayer, which we've already covered is not a prayer, but one of the petitions in it is, Creator, carve out a space in me for your wholeness. What do we need to carve out? What are you carving it out of? Why isn't that wholeness just there? Because we bought into something else. We've chosen or decided to live in something other than that wholeness. And the carving out, we have to participate with. And we participate with it. The carving knife is forgiveness, to remove those energetic patterns until there is the full incarnation of being into our physiology. And it comes with the breath. And softening every place inside of us that holds anything other than love. So I join you in softening any of those spaces, any of those places. And when we soften into them, there's usually quite a bit of pain there. But if we maintain rakhma, then the underlying neurostructure that came into our physiology at the moment we were given breath, that neurostructure that's become latent or unconscious, hidden, covered over by the dynamics of the generations and the world. Life, it's like, it's like you've got a set of gears, and the one set of gears turns the other set of gears. And it's like when you make that shift, what I'm talking about that, was so clear to me on that drive down I-95. It's like the world picks up the gear that's interacting with us, turns it X number of degrees, and every response in regard to that issue changes. And it doesn't change until we make that shift.
So I would suggest that our own personal pain is our own personal crucifixion that we need to go through.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's not about...
It's all an inside job.
Right. Okay.
So what's my first order of business? I'm going to go back and do the work required in order to get back to rakhma. So that, and I might still ask the question, but when I ask the question, it's going to come from a space of connected love in the mind of being rather than carbon-based memory and replicating the same old stuff. And then I bring in the energy that is fulfilling not only to me, but is the salt of the earth that provides that support space for all of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and within that question is also the question of who is my author, who is my authority, who is my source of who is the one I am directing my questioning to. I'm very grateful that I have been a pacifist for over 50 years, probably about 56 years, and I get more and more confirmed in it. Even with your conversation with Susan, I think it was yesterday, that there is no difference between offense and defense. They use exactly the same tactics. They have exactly the same energy. And I wish I could say that I could stand in integrity if the proverbial stuff hits the fan.
Well, they're just flip sides of the same coin.
Not there. Pardon?
They're just flip sides of the same coin.
Right, and that's that's what I realized about the power person dynamic as well. It doesn't matter whether I assume that I am the victim or I am going to be the one in charge, it doesn't matter, because if I'm the victim, I'll try to agree, and if I can't agree, then I'll go into resistance, and if I can't go into resistance, or I see myself as holding the power, I turn into a full-blown replicate of my mother, who was probably in a full-blown replicate of her mother, all the way up through the ancestral line. And so Jesus' crucifixion really had to do with his ancestral work and his working it through so that he could embrace rakhma, or the mind of Christ, that holy office, totally, fully, because that's what his goal was. That was the one goal he hung on to through all of his own personal crucifixion process, which culminated on the cross, but was pretty much finished at the, not pretty much, there was still some mopping up to do, I think. I don't think he fully realized what he had managed to create between him and the other person on the cross, or between him and the soldier, according to the story of the Way of Mastery. Whether that is so or not, I have no idea. It's irrelevant. The story is still valid. Yeah, for me. And I certainly have my work to do, because every little irritation I create, self-create, whether it's towards my cat, or towards my sweetheart, or towards myself, or whatever, that's just hiding the pain that I'm running away from.
Yeah, and I think it's a powerful lesson to remember that what he demonstrated, where the suffering mind goes into, crucifixion and suffering, and guilt and blame, you drove in the nails, it's your fault that he died for your sins, that whole game. And when you replace that with the true message, and the true message was, I just discovered my human life fully. Look, here's this man going to come and chop me to pieces, and I'm going to heal him. And he showed us the power of the ability to stand as conscious, active, present love, to maintain our human lives, which is the whole idea of, when they said, what's most important in the law, basically they were saying, what's most important if you're going to really, truly live a human life? He says, you got to have rakhma. When you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor, now you've got your human life. And he showed us the power of what a human life is. They can't keep you dead even, if you got one of those. If you don't have one, then, you get your 10, the energy system on a physiological level winds down, and it's dead. It dies. It just disintegrates back to the elements from which it's made. But we're not made
from those elements. And then you get another opportunity, if you're fortunate, to come back down.
We're made of the fifth element. Yeah, we're made of the fifth element, not the four: earth, air, fire, and water. We're made of the fifth one, breath.
Mm-hmm. The wholeness.
Eternal.
Mm-hmm. So we can't really die, because that's all delusional as well. We can only die. The body can die, but we as spirit don't die.
And the body can't die unless it's disconnected from its power supply. You go back and review Revelations. Yeshua says, to he that overcomes, what are you overcoming? This whole propensity to live in denial, dissociation, projection. To he or she that overcomes, he or she shall not taste of the second death. What's the first death? When awareness of the created essence, your human life that was given to you as a free gift with your first breath, when that is lost, and you buy into a self in the mind, then death occurs. That's the dead who bury the dead, the blind who lead by the blind. He says, if you overcome that death, then you will not taste of the second death. You will become a pillar in the temple. What is the body called by the scriptures? It's a temple of God.
Mm-hmm.
And what's a pillar? It's a long-term fixture. He will become a pillar in the temple and shall go out no more. You don't kill another body. And I suspect you get to kill as many as you need to till you wake up to, oh, I'm made of something else.
So it might behoove us whenever we're in irritation, fear, pain, grief, blame, judgment, to remind ourselves that we're the walking dead in that moment.
Yeah, well, I've shared on the show before that a thing that really shifted for me and empowered me to confront that in myself was to recognize that any state other than love operating in human physiology is a mental illness. And so when I would find myself getting into that, teeth grinding, irritation type thing, it's like, this is my mind, of course, has got a whole picture about why it's caused from out there. That's an hallucination. When I could admit, this is my mental illness, I was able to drop it so much faster, so much more consistently. Oh, this hostility that I think is caused by Joe, Harry, Mary, Bill, Hortense, is my
Myrtle.
mental illness. It's not them. Myrtle, yeah. It's not them. It's my mental illness. And owning that, the blame game drops very quickly. I'm sitting in front of someone that I'm blaming, and I stop and remind myself, oh, this is my mental illness. This is my incapacity. That membership card, in that one world universal religion is torn up instantly when I do that. And then I get to breathe through and process through whatever part of my mind I'm destroying myself with. Because all hostility or fear is what destroys physiology and mixes awareness of our human lives.
Myrtle's my kitty.
Ah.
Larry's kitty, actually.
Myrtle still give you opportunities to learn forgiveness.
Yeah, and you know what? She's uncontrollable. Go figure.
Yeah, gee. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Yeah, we told her she must be a miller when she came to live with us. Oh, she's been waking me up at night, and since I don't mind being awakened when she needs to go out because there's no cat box in the motorhome. There's no room. Part of the agreement. And but then she plays these little kitty games. Oh, I want to go out. No, I don't. I want to go out. So, and then I wake poor Larry up because I'm in a total state of irritation. I'm afraid I'm going to strangle the cat. So, bless him. He has to get up, take care of the cat.
Oh.
So, but he's been very patient, more than overwhelmingly patient with me. I'm just very grateful. So you have a happy Thanksgiving, dear heart. This has been a wonderful conversation, and you have resolved something that has disturbed me for 70 years, probably.
Oh, there's something out there that's disturbed you for 70 years?
I was disturbed. I stirred my own pot and disturbed myself. How about that one?
Yay. Nice catch. Well, all the world rejoices at a major insight like that because it delivers the energy of that insight on an invisible level to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And that's the whole objective of this work, is to get that delivery system operating so efficiently that we get to critical mass, where the physicist Yeshua said, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf. If we can just get enough people, instead of living out of their poverty and their grief and their blame and their victimhood, we get enough people through the gate going, oh, I'm going to live from creatorship. I'm going to live from being. Then that collectively will create an energy that will, when the energy of that becomes incarnated in enough people, then it will create a critical mass field that will change the game for everybody. So thank you for being willing and taking on that insight.
Well, I am very grateful to every one of us, and especially Susan, because I just feel like she and I are critical massing each other. I hope I am for her in the context of what we're learning. And so I'm just very grateful for her friendship and for all of us. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
In the plan.
A grateful giving today for everyone.
And let's maybe just check with Susan and see if she's got anything to share. Any thoughts?
Okay.
I have her microphone on. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Hey there. Welcome.
Well, hi, thanks. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
We got back from a meal, and we're all stuffed, and I went and lay down, and I have to admit that I fell asleep during your and Celinda's checking in with each other, so I missed probably the crucial part.
No, that's okay. You were probably just right deep in process. That's perfect.
That's the putting a kindly light on it. So, but I did do 2 wake-up sheets with my sister, and she did not come today. She didn't feel well enough to come. She's sick a lot, and she was in bed and said she had no energy and didn't want to come out. And so, in a way, just hearing the fact that her own life is so hard for her right now softens some of my anger, but that isn't to say I don't need to do it. I had several stuck points. One in the worksheet, I'm using this 5-step Rice wake-up sheet with Dr. Timothy Hayes' detailed processing, which is one of my favorites. So, the line, I affirm that I want to be shown the truth and am willing to have my reality and its effects change. Willing to have my reality and its effects change. I went on from there, but I could only say that. I couldn't really even feel it because I don't even feel much willingness. I feel an intention to find willingness. You talked about respect and my mother and Joe not respecting. That's a great word. It's a great added dimension. And so I'm thinking about Joe's lack of respect and the actuality of what she had done to Jonathan. I cancel my need for anyone or anything to change, including me. Well, that was easy. I don't think Joe is going to change, and maybe I'm not either. So canceling the need to have anybody change was a happy thought for a moment, but you can see I'm just not really ready with this, very ready. Where's the other stuck point? Oh, well, I'll skip all the way down to my true source is love. I reconnect to that source and ask both I and my trigger to be restored to love. And I write, no way. So you can see there's a lot of work to be done here. But she has ended up by, as in her own words, she says, I have not realized any of my potential. I've wasted my life. I had a lot of talents, a lot of opportunities. I didn't take them. I ended up alone, angry. So she's told me that at various times. And we still continue to pay for her life expenses, and we continue not to confront her. Jonathan doesn't want me to even mention what she did to him.
Right.
And so the best I've been able to do in the meantime is consign her to God. Just consign her to God and say, this is God's business. This is not my business anymore. And that's where it sits. So it's not a tremendous wake-up sheet.
Well, actually, I think it opens some interesting doors as you look at it again. And one of those doors, if I think back to some of the sharing that you've done in terms of relationship in past sessions over the years, and you've acknowledged that to some degree have used people as sexual objects. I think that would be an accurate statement, would it?
I don't know if it's sexual. It's more emotional attachment. I haven't been going around jumping into bed with anybody, and I haven't even really wanted that. I've wanted some kind of a heartfelt commitment and a sense that the other person cares about me. I certainly haven't been, however you worded it, hasn't been healthy or right.
So that might be another piece of your puzzle to getting to a full state of connectedness and love when you think of the situation with your sister and Jonathan.
Oh, it's definitely
I think that might be another
a
piece of the puzzle
goal
to work through. So just canceling the need for, it might be emotional integrity, it might be sexual integrity, it might be intellectual integrity, perhaps all three of those. Might be other pieces to cleaning out whatever is held in carbon-based memory that keeps you from standing in a fully healed space when you think of your sister and Jonathan.
Emotional integrity. I'm going to have to sit with that one for quite a while. Because
You've spoken.
I thought, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I haven't thought of that as lacking in integrity before, what I do with people and being attached. I thought in a way that they were the recipients of what I think of as one of the best parts of me, the fact that I can value them so highly, but maybe I'm not valuing them. I might have a real thought disorder here. I've also thought that if I could... Go ahead.
Yeah, if you look at the cases where, and as I would interpret it when you shared in the past, there was a teacher at school or someone else that you kind of objectified them, and what you say now is, really gifting them, but in truth, wasn't it really wanting something back, something you wanted from them?
Oh, yeah.
So in a sense,
Definitely.
using them. And that would be where the emotional integrity would come in.
Mm.
And it sounds like, when you think of an older woman using a young boy, that's definitely out of emotional integrity.
Hmm. I get it. So my question is it possible, and you say we've never loved anybody, is it possible to feel great appreciation for someone without using them in any way? That must be
Absolutely.
possible.
Yeah, I think the answer to that one, in one case, if I'm using someone, in the other, if I'm co-creating with someone.
Mm.
Two different things.
Yeah.
You know, I've got this hole in me, and I'm going to act a certain way so that you'll fill that hole for me, would be
Right.
using someone.
I see.
Owning, I've got this hole in me, I'd love support, would you be there for me? And that person likely is going to have some kind of a matching bag of garbage. And they'll go, you know, in integrity will say, yes, gee, well, I have this. And so let's join in creating this healing process where we both step up with the assistance and the lift from each other's true being, rather than I'm going to use your true being to try to get what I want. You've got something I want and you need to give it to me. And then I'm disappointed because, of course, they can't give it to me, because what I need to do is heal the part of me that has that want and desire or that lack.
Mm-hmm.
Which is being out of integrity already. Because integrity actually has to do with our seeing ourselves as that which we desire in the other. And in that context, we would be gifting it to the other, not trying to get it from them, stealing their life energy instead of going directly to our source for our life energy. So it doesn't have anything to do with me being bad. It has to do with me being lost in my own misunderstanding and misperception of who I am.
And when we come from being, that's where we can help to fill in the space for someone from compassion and joining with the truth of who they are rather than the error that they're lost in.
You know, years ago there was a woman who, we are very good friends. She came to me doing to me what I have done to people when I get overly attached in that not healthy way. And I recognized that, and I felt great compassion for her and made sure I did not hurt her. And I stayed steadfast, but I couldn't fill that hole in her, which for her involved a certain amount of physical affection too, which I was not drawn to do that. And she accepted that I didn't. And we just stayed with each other until for her that need passed. But what I missed, I thought to myself, wow, here's an opportunity. Here's the person who's asking me for something that I've often wanted from someone else. I can't do it. The missing component was like the part about taking cocaine. I was talking to Luke, my grandson. He said, it's like, I've been on cocaine, he says. I know about cocaine, and being in love in the way I am is like getting a hit of cocaine. And it's got to the point where I take my hit, and I'm still anxious because I'm afraid the hit's going to go away and I'm going to need another one. So I can't even be with the girl anymore, because I'm already anxious that she's going to leave. There's a hit involved in my projections on certain other people that's got a really bad component that I still don't know what to do with. Because if it's lacking, then it's just a regular friendship, and I might get a lot of pleasure out of it, but something's missing. So
my offering would be that what's in every case where that happens, what's missing is I made this projection of my mind more important than staying connected to my being and to my source.
absolutely, totally, I can get that. Totally.
So can you have empathy and perhaps compassion for your sister, who it sounds like most of her life has been a life of lack and loss and self-deprivation and deprecation, that she tries to gain it from sexual attention with your son? And not in any way saying approving of it, but at least moving into a space of compassion that can open the healing for the underlying dynamic.
Yeah, there's that part of it, and that I could stick with that and think of that. The other part of it is that she wanted to hurt me because I kept getting things that she thought she needed and wanted and wasn't getting, like better Christmas presents, and she would lie and steal and exaggerate and do all kinds of things to bring herself up to ground level. And going after my son is certainly a way of getting at me. So there's that whole component too, and that's one of the things. Yeah. That's another part of it that
Another
I'm
77 times 70 worksheets.
No kidding. Oh, geez. So, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Whoa, I know it's 2 o'clock. I see that.
Yeah. So I join with you in appreciation for this whole opportunity to get clarity and heal and bring healing to your family system and to the earth in regard to this type of an issue.
Boy, that's so big. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Huge. Joining you.
Thanks. So,
Right.
you've told us 5 times, but is this it and you're going away now, or will we hear you on Monday, or no, tomorrow's Friday. Will you be here Friday?
Oh no. We're here. Oh, the special series that we're doing on relationships, that will start on December the 26th, day after Christmas. We leave Bristol on the 26th to head to Nashville for Ryan's surgery on the 27th.
Got it. So that's
still a month away.
Time.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll be rocking on.
Okay. Great.
All right. Thank you, dear hearts, both of
Thank
you, holding the space.
Thanks, Celinda.
And
all right.
Everyone, create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give yourself. Joining you in giving yourself the gift of being and the deepest appreciation that comes with it. Bless